After offering the alternative episode of the Prospector Podcast, Digest Edition, we have finally returned to the UGLC for Season 13, Episode 4 of the Prospector Podcast. And even though the number 13 is supposed to signal unluckiness, we're getting pretty lucky with the guests that we have on Episode 4. Joining us is Benjamin Grajeda and Hector Flores from MinerVision. They tell us what it's like running real-life ESPN productions in the perspective of a student through all sports. And finally, we speak to the voice of the Miners, who has been calling UTEP games on the radio for 45 years. The legendary Jon Teicher sits down with the Prospector Podcast and tells us the stories of him getting started, his favorite memories, and finally, what he thinks it means to be a Miner. This is Episode 4, Season 13 of the Prospector Podcast. I'm Sebastian, Perez-Navarro. Welcome back to the Prospector Podcast, Episode 4 of Unlucky Number 13. Cameron Mason is finally back, officially co-hosting since Episode 1. Cam, it's good to see your face again.
It's glad to be back, man. I'm sad that classes got in the way, but glad to be back.
You're taking like a whole 3-hour environmental lab, right?
Yeah, that thing sucks. Oh my gosh, yeah.
That is brutal. Well, I'm glad that you're with us as a former athlete who's transitioning into the world of journalism, because we got two very special people with us from MinerVision. I'm going to go ahead and let you guys do your introductions. You might know the person to my left because he was in the El Paso video. He has been calling softball for 3 years, does women's basketball, and then someone who's very important behind the scenes. I'll let you guys do the rest of the talking.
You start off, bro.
Yeah, okay. I'm a little bit newer here. My name's Hector Flores. I'm officially part of MinerVision. I've been doing this for about a year and a half now, if we want to start where we're at right now. I mainly do a lot of camera operations, but you can also see me doing some replay and actually some video board directing.
You do replay?
Yeah, I did for softball season.
Oh, man.
Yeah, he did. He was pretty good at it.
That was all you? Wow, I did not know
Yeah.
that. I thought you were doing most of the cams, man.
I'm everywhere.
So, and then we got...
And then my name is Benjamin Grajeda. I am a aerospace engineering major. I've been doing MinerVision for a little over 3 years now, but it's been a long journey there. Been doing a little bit of color commentary, play-by-play, some sideline reporting, a little behind the scenes too with replay, cams, wireless, all that kind of stuff. So it's all been fun so far over these past 3 years at MinerVision.
All right. Well, the first thing I got to ask is a very important question that has the whole weight of the program under it, and that is, where's UTEP football going this season? What's happening right now as we record? 1-4, 0-1 in CUSA, a game coming up next Wednesday on our bye week. I need to get your guys' thoughts on that before we dive into MinerVision itself.
You can answer that
You
one
can
first.
do that one.
No. That's all you first. I answered the first question first.
Well, obviously, Coach Walden has gotten a lot of good recruits coming into UTEP, so he's starting, from where he started last year, and it's just building the program little by little. Nothing happens overnight, and I think that's what a lot of people need to understand about appointing a new head coach. Like, you're not going to get results like in a snap like that. So it's about trusting the process. They've shown some good flashes over some of the games, and they just got to keep doing what they do in order to improve. A lot of energy definitely on that field from UTEP football, so I'm sure they'll turn it around at some point during the season and hopefully get the fans back into coming to the games.
No, yeah, 100%. I can agree with that. I definitely would have to say it is a big trust the process thing. First off, I want to say that defense is actually really amazing, more than you guys realize. Through those first 4 weeks, they really haven't allowed a lot of points. They're really good at tackling, and they're really coming together as one whole unit, really through this beginning first quarter of the season. Offense, looks a little bit slow at first, but I have to say, once they probably get themselves going, hopefully they get that quarterback situation right. I really feel like they have the receivers to be capable to extend the field, get more yardage downs, put up a lot of points. We saw a lot versus that UT Martin game. They're very capable of showing those high flashes, and I just want to say to everyone who is a UTEP fan, just stick in with us, stick in with everybody here. I know it might be a little bit of a wrong first quarter of the season, but I promise it will get better in that second half. We did show a lot of flashes last year with that, so be sticking in. Stay tuned. I promise it'll all stick out in the end.
You're looking directly at the camera, man. You got the full UTEP sales pitch going on.
Thank you, guys.
Wearing the uniform and everything. Okay, so then you guys during football season are mainly working as cam ops. How different is it seeing the game from the sidelines compared to being in the stands or from a fan's perspective in general?
Oh, man. Just the raw emotion, I got to say mostly. I feel like a lot of the time you guys get to see the emotion on the camera screen, but being that actual close to the emotion and the people, you hear a lot of what's being said, and you feel the type of way that the players react to certain situations. Offensive drive stalls, defense is not getting the hold or the type of momentum that they want. And, man, it's really echoed throughout that sideline that, hey, we need to work on ourselves. We need to prepare ourselves to be better. It's really, really intriguing how close you can be as a camera person to capture everything that goes on. Like, you're really not far away from anything at all. You witness everything firsthand, whole.
And for both of you guys, I know you, for behind the scenes, I had done a story with MinerVision just kind of highlighting the behind the scenes and just bringing life to what you guys do.
Mm-hmm.
And I just wanted to know from you guys' perspective how it feels, because I feel like you guys really bring the game to life, even though people won't really realize. How does it feel to really be the main ones to bring the game to life? I know you're not, on the field or anything.
Right.
It's the main product, but, how does that feel?
I mean, it feels good because there's a lot of preparation behind of what we do to bring everything to life. Especially for football games, we have a little run through the day before. We have a script of everything. Like, okay, X person is going to be here during this time to make sure they get this certain shot in order for our, our task to be completed throughout the game. So, and then fan shots, obviously, got to get that in. It's always fun seeing a lot of fans in the stands because it just makes the program so much better. And getting all those fan shots, you'll see someone shouting, "Let's go Miners," or just the picks up in general. So it's pretty cool working behind the scenes and seeing all that kind of stuff. But also in between, like when the game's going on, prepping for, okay, this is coming up next, we're going to do this promotion, and making sure we're ready on time for it.
No, yeah, 100%. I love to see how many people can come together to actually make a production come to life. I don't think that many people realize how many people actually work behind the scenes to make your production actually look good. People see the camera angle just changes and they think, okay, that's maybe 4 or 5 people at max. There's a lot of people that go into a whole production as a whole, and everybody buys in. And when everybody buys into what we're doing as a whole at work, I feel like our productions go a lot smoother and it makes everything feel a lot better. And it honestly just doesn't even make work feel like work. As somebody who really enjoys sports, holding a camera and making sure my angles are good and making sure that our production runs smoothly and I'm where I need to be and I need to do what I need to do really feels good. And it really feels like a family almost, because everybody really is comfortable with each other and everyone's really all about wanting the same goal, and that's really just having a great production at the end of the day.
So to give some context on MinerVision, it's basically student production for ESPN broadcasts at the University of Texas at El Paso. Students mainly work behind the scenes, but sometimes we get reps on air or in general with the ESPN production itself. Volleyball and softball are productions that students have a heavy impact on the broadcast. Yet for sports like basketball and football, usually MinerVision interns and students are working with marketing. What are the main differences there that you guys have seen in your experience?
I mean, there's a big difference. I mean, with basketball, working with freelancers and all those people, you see that they've been here before. They have all that experience. They rarely mess up, honestly. And it's pretty cool to see that firsthand, working with professionals and, networking with them, communicating with them, and just seeing how they move as a whole during a production differently than students. And, with us students, we're still learning the process of how to get everything right. So we're just going up little by little, if you know what I mean. So there's definitely a big difference, but thankfully everybody there, students and freelancers, have worked really well together, hand in hand, and it's a really great environment to be in.
Benji, I don't want to be offensive here when I say this, but I think that you're on UNC status at MinerVision.
Just a bit.
Wow,
Just a
okay.
bit.
Yeah, just a bit.
Just a
Hector,
bit.
do you agree with me?
Just a bit.
Hector agrees with me.
He's
a
been
little
with
bit.
there, but
I mean,
longer.
you've been with MinerVision since almost the start. You started off as a creative intern and then got more into broadcasting. How has the program changed in your time there? Also, in considering that you were originally a comm major, then decided to say, hey, you know what? Comm isn't hard enough. College isn't hard enough. Let me study aerospace engineering. How have you seen the program change?
Well, when I started back in 2022, it was a little bit of us, we started with something called CUSA Productions. That had been going on for a little bit. So that one, it was just, you needed one cam op and then one score bug, and that's it, and one creative. That was it for MinerVision. Just 3 people working a broadcast, or not even a broadcast, just the game with creative hand in hand. And I guess when CUSA signed that deal with ESPN where we would start doing more broadcasts, that's where it really started to grow. And that's where, like, hey, we need a lot more people, because there was a time where there was only like 8 of us interning at MinerVision, and people like Chris, Ismyrna, Xander, Jacob, I mean, they've all been there for a while, and needing to go hand in hand, go from creative, going to broadcast. So, and I mean, we're still kind of doing that today, also with Ben Peterson as AD, but that's how it was with Jordan Woodruff, Keith King. Man, I am unconscious.
So you've been
Yes, you are.
Yeah, since 2022 is crazy.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. But what I was going to ask is, for MinerVision, just to promote it, what type of opportunities outside of it have opened up for either one of you?
Oh man, definitely.
Or if any.
Shucks. I gotta say, when I was first thinking about coming into MinerVision, this was like summer of 23, I want to say, or summer of 24. What was last year? 24, right?
24.
Summer of 24. I had put in my email and sent my resume to MinerVision to officially get in. And when I first had gotten the email back saying, hey, we want to interview you, I was so excited. And I could not be more happy to be a part of this MinerVision crew, and to go be a part of a lot of this production, and to go be having a full year's worth of experience opened a lot of doors for me within a year, believe it or not. Thankfully, all thanks to God, actually, I was actually able to land a lot more job opportunities with the Chihuahuas and Locomotives as well. Same with the Rhinos, same with graduations, concerts, just a lot of things that go into a production in this city as a whole. I don't know if we have a lot of outside listeners from El Paso, but here in El Paso, we have a minor league system with the Chihuahuas, same with a lower league soccer division level, the USL, with the Locomotives. Those also get broadcasted. I know Locomotives is with ESPN Plus. Chihuahuas is with the Major League Baseball app. Those are 2 other things I get to do as well outside of MinerVision, that if you would have told me maybe 2 years ago, hey, you're going to be in this spot doing this thing for these people, I would have called you crazy. I would have said, there's no way, there's no chance. There's no way you could make me have this big of a leap in this amount of time. And I honestly have to say that most credit should go to MinerVision, because I wouldn't have learned the things that I would have done, and I wouldn't have had a lot of the work ethic that I would have had done if it wasn't for MinerVision, and it wasn't for those people in that office building getting their work done and getting those opportunities for myself out there in this city. And more than anything, I'm grateful for everybody in that office for helping me out. Same with my family. I had some help on there too. Helped me grow and helped me get more opportunities in this city, and I couldn't be more thankful for them. And it's really been an amazing grow within these past 2 years for myself in MinerVision, I gotta say.
Congrats on that.
Yeah.
Thank you, I appreciate it.
Best cam off for broadcast.
Yeah,
right
yeah.
there.
No, I
just
can't.
saying.
Cam
blowing
up,
up my belt a little
replay,
bit.
wireless cam, the pioneer of helping sideline reporting make its debut for MinerVision.
Yeah.
Hector, you were talking about it earlier, the fact that you have like experience podcasting as a DMP major.
Yeah.
Have you seen any similarities between your major and what you do at MinerVision? And on the contrast, any differences?
Oh, yeah, 100%. I gotta say, as a digital media productions major, a lot of what I do for that is basically learning what it's like to be on a movie set. And I gotta say, what it's like to be on a movie set is very similar, yet very different what it's like to be on a broadcast for a sports event. So for movies, you would say you have your directors, producers, cams. There's also the people who work on your focus. There's regular PAs, and they all kind of come together to make a film the same way we all come together to make a broadcast. Theirs just takes a little bit longer of a time, having 12 to 16-hour work days, making sure their things come together, and they have a lot of post-editing and a lot of things to do. But Man, I have to credit DMP a lot too, because that summer class I was taking intermediate media production, and that summer course with Ramon Villa, we basically learned what it was like to be on a movie set, and we learned how it would work in a professional level. And I would say if it wasn't for that class, I wouldn't have been so prepared going into MinerVision as I would be, man. Like, it's a real help. It's a big shout out to mainly Ramon Villa and everyone who was in that intermediate class for making everything so special and helping me be prepared for MinerVision as a whole. But you'd be surprised. There is a lot of similarities, just as in terms of the roles and everyone wanting to all pitch in and just make the one certain goal of putting that thing on the big screen.
Name 5 of your classmates from that intermediate class.
Oh, okay. Anastasia Sigala, Gwen Palomares.
Okay, we got two.
Let me think. Isaiah Chavez, Aiden Aguirre. And there was one on the football team. His name's Gabe. No, it's a shout out to everybody who was in that class. I mean, they were the people who also made that all come together and make those roles very special. And I got to say, being a part of that class and as a whole, it was probably one of the coolest classes to ever take here at UTEP. I got to say, it really didn't feel like a class. That was probably like the easiest 3 credits in my whole life. It was really, really cool. And I really appreciate everybody for accepting me for who I was in that class, and all of you guys too.
Aww.
Thank you guys.
I feel like the tears are going to start rolling out. So when I entered MinerVision back in the spring, both of you guys were extremely welcoming, and I'm extremely grateful for that. But right off the bat from my first day, it was evident. You guys have an amazing friendship. Benji, you were like tapping the glass when Hector was being a cam up for softball.
Yeah.
How did you guys meet, and how did you guys develop that friendship in what is an easily extremely stressful job around sports?
Well, I met Hector when he started in August of 24 last year, and I think we both worked as a cam up. I believe I was doing the game cam up top, and he was right below me. And, it's just forming a good camaraderie with people that you work with, building a friendship. You just get repetitions in together, and sometimes things just click, So that's what's happened with Hector and I. And then there's also one football game I'd like to recall from a couple of weeks ago where we were both on wireless, and the antennas, they weren't working.
Oh, they were bad.
Rain.
Oh, they were bad.
Yeah. So
get the kid. Somebody get the kickoff
Yes,
kid.
indeed.
So we had to go back to the office, get a different antenna, go back up all the way to the bird box, which is, by the way, all the 4th floor of the press box. So
yeah, it's all the way at the top.
we
if you
were
didn't know.
we were working on that like for an hour before pregame until finally, one camera works and Hector's just sprinting down to the field. And then eventually that camera shot off, and then somehow, some way, we got both cameras to work right at halftime. So, it's just being able to work well together. That's how you build friendships, and just trusting one another for those situations that are really high stress.
No, yeah, 100%. I got to agree with Benji. That game a couple weeks ago was so stressful, man. I got to say, if you actually watch any of our productions on ESPN Plus,
What a plug.
or seeing any of our games that UTEP does for football, I'm there on screen running around. I'm there a lot of the times, getting in the huddle, getting the run out, getting the end zone celebrations. So I'm all over the place. Like, if you see me running around on that field during a production, you know where I'm at, and you should know what I'm doing. It's all about business. But, man, I agree. Met Benji last year. It was so amazing. It's such a great experience. I mean, they, more than anything, they were more welcoming to me the same way we were with you. I was just reciprocating that same energy that they had brought over to me, I think everybody in that office is just so welcoming and so open-hearted and really just nice as a whole. Paul Sandoval, our creative major, great guy. Ben Peterson, head of broadcasting, great person. You have all our coworkers like Luisa and Jacob and Chris and you, Benji, and you, Sebastian, and all our new people like Ashley and Abby and all of them, everybody was that new guy at one point. So when I was that new guy, I was very nervous and I was very scared to kind of branch out and be myself. But Benji made it a lot easier for me to come out and open off my closed shell a bit and be a little bit more myself. And it made me feel a lot more welcoming. That's what made MinerVision and this whole experience feel more welcoming for myself. And that's why I kind of talk about us as a whole being a family, because that's kind of the energy that we bring into that office, is that wholehearted, welcoming, everybody's, you know, a part of a team. Everyone is really just a family at the end of the day. And, you know, it all started with this guy right here in front of me. Like, that's just one of my closest and earliest friends that I made here at MinerVision. And I honestly don't know where I would do if Benji wasn't around. I don't know what kind of guy I would be talking to around on the sidelines. You know, it's kind of like a partner in crime at the end of the day. And it's just a great dynamic duo to have. And I think it's just a long way that we've come. Just the year that I've been here, I feel like that our friendship and our bond has really just grown a lot. And I think it's amazing how much further, and you don't know what you could do 5 years down the line. Say, hey, you need a call, I need a camera person doing this, oh, I need a sideline commentator doing this type of game. You don't know, but I think it's great that Benji was able to just be a great person as a whole and welcome me into the MinerVision with everybody else.
So to clarify on that one, the game where the antennas were missing and everything was week 2 versus UT Martin.
Yes.
You guys clutched up tremendously.
Absolutely.
Because,
man.
when video board directing, I was just begging the cams from the broadcast side to get what we needed to get. So thank you to you guys. Before we end off this segment, I wanted to ask each of you individually, what's the best game you've ever gotten to cover?
Oh, man.
That is, since I've been here for 3 years, it's been a lot,
Yeah, that's
man.
going to be harder for you.
The dinosaurs roamed Earth and Benji worked for MinerVision.
That's crazy.
Most definitely.
I think I'll let Hector start off with that one just because he's been here for the least amount of time.
Oh, goodness. That's such a hard thing to ask, though, like favorite. I mean, honestly, I can say favorite, and my favorite sport would always be football. Man, those game days on football, working any of them is just such a blast, and being a part of a production and being a part of game day, but actually being more involved in the college game day world is just so enjoyable. And I would have to say any of those football. I guess we could say that UT Martin one recently, most definitely, because man, me and Benji really had to pull our engineering hats off and went from 2 cameras to 1 camera to 0 and then to 1 and then to 2. So I gotta say that was such an impressive feat to actually do for both of us in one game, man. That's got to be a memory in the bank up there.
Yeah, I got a couple games. I think only one from each sport, if that's cool.
Absolutely.
So with volleyball, when they hosted the NIVC tournament, I was grateful to be on the call with that with Duke Keith, who many of you might know. He does play-by-play for Locomotives. He does play-by-play for the El Paso Rhinos, also for UTEP soccer and UTEP volleyball. So, I learned a lot from him. I'm thankful for that. But that game against Clemson in the quarterfinals 2023, that was an amazing atmosphere. Just the whole Memorial Gym was shaking. People were outside the building. You could just feel the energy in there. We were set up where in the second deck up there in that little hall where you walk, and there was just people around you, behind you, in front of you. It was just amazing for that. And then for men's basketball, I'll name another one real quick. I got a chance to do silent reporting for an NMSU game for men's basketball. In that game, it was, I believe, 10,500 in attendance in 2024. I think it was in February 24. So that was cool. And I got to give props to Paul Sandoval for allowing me to do silent reporting, because I messed up a few times to begin it, and he took the blame for me. And, I'm just grateful that he allowed me to continue doing it, put that trust in me, And then I got 2 more games. Women's basketball, there was one where we were trailing by 16 points. I was on the call with Mondo Medina, who he does EP Sports Network. He's also a great guy that I've learned a lot from. And that game, we were down by 16 at the half against Western Kentucky. They came back, won that game with a player ejected, and that was Keitha Adams' 500th win of her career. And then for softball, man, I got 2 for softball, actually. There's one with you and one with Alberto Ureta, who's now in Denver. Hopefully he watches this. Exactly.
Yeah.
There was a game against Purdue Fort Wayne where just the calls weren't going our way. We thought there was a walk-off home run, but the ball hit the top of the fence and then came back in, and they walked it off because of a drop catch. But Alberto, another great guy I work with, he was my first broadcasting partner, so that was cool. And then lastly, with the NMSU series, that first game where they walked it off, that was a very good game. And that was a game where I felt like, our chemistry started to form a little bit. more and more as the season went on. That game was like, a switch for me, So, and that obviously we did good work that season. So
Benji, you were a great partner in crime.
You too, man.
I'm extremely grateful to have you as a broadcast partner. We'll be continuing on in the Prospector Podcast. Thank you, Hector Flores, Benjamin Grajeda, and Cameron Mason for joining me today. You're watching the Prospector Podcast, Season 13, Episode 4. Welcome back to the Prospector Podcast, Season 13, Episode 4. Adrian Gonzalez joining me as a co-host. Adrian, thank you so much for taking the time to talk with me, man.
Thank you so much for having me here, Sebastian. I'm super excited, man.
Adrian, this is your first time officially co-hosting. How are you feeling?
Really nervous, especially to the guy to my right,
Well,
it's just super honored.
You know what? Maybe the stakes are a little bit high because joining us on the Prospector Podcast is the voice of the Miners, Jon Teicher. Mr. Teicher, it is an honor to have you.
You can call me John, by the way, Adrian, but thank you, and or rather Sebastian. And Adrian, no need to be nervous.
Thank you, John. For those who have been keeping up with UTEP student media and publications, a year ago I had the pleasure to sit down with John and talk about over how Scotty Walden's rebuild of UTEP football in the timeline that we may be looking at. But now the pressing question 1 year later for you, John, is what does it feel like to be on a bye week?
Well, it doesn't really feel like a bye week because it's really not a full bye week. It's about a week and a half between games, so it doesn't feel much like a bye week. Yeah, my Monday and Tuesday was probably a little different than it would have been had we had a game this Saturday. But now that it's Thursday, we're actually in game week because we've got another game this coming Wednesday against Liberty, the last of that 3-game homestand for UTEP. So it didn't feel like a typical bye week.
It is a short week. CUSA national scheduling can be a little odd sometimes. Before we go into the present, let's go ahead and go into the past. John, correct me if I'm wrong here, but you're entering your 45th year calling UTEP football on the radio on 600 ESPN El Paso, previously gone by a different name. That ESPN name came just a little over a decade ago, correct?
I believe so. I don't have the timeline firmly in my head, but that seems about right, yes.
When that happened, were there any major differences made to the radio station?
Well, other than the program that they're carrying and being affiliated with ESPN, which I think is a definite positive, I'm not sure that there were a lot of changes made to the local composition of ESPN 600's programming. Sports Talk has been a staple on that station since the early 1990s, and I hosted for several years before Steve took over in 1997. So the personnel is largely the same, and the local programming is largely the same as it's been since ESPN joined on to 600 El Paso.
Let's go ahead and go back in time and offer some context at least. John, you're a Detroit native who went to UCLA, class of 1980. What brought you to El Paso, Texas?
I actually came here to do Diablos baseball. It was always my goal to be a sports broadcaster, a play-by-play broadcaster. Specifically, I wanted to do baseball. And when I was a junior and senior in college, I started calling all the AAA and AA clubs in America to try and find where there might be an opening. At that time, basically it was only the AAA and AA clubs that were doing all their games on radio. So when I called El Paso, Jim Paul was the owner of the El Paso club, and I was very familiar with what he had accomplished, being at the forefront of promotions every night when you open the doors for a minor league baseball game. He was right at the forefront of that. So I was aware of the success that they had here in El Paso. And when I asked Jim if his games were on radio, he said no. So that sent off bells in my head as to this being a place that possibly I could get my start. In the meantime, I had affiliated with a national network of sorts that bought sports broadcasting rights and placed broadcasters into these particular situations. And we set up an agreement that I would come to El Paso, sell the advertising for Diablos baseball, and broadcast the games on 1380 AM back at that particular time. And I had no idea what I was going to do when that first Diablos season was over. And sure enough, in the middle of the summer, I got a call from the group that helped place me here, that national network, indicating to me that they had picked up the New Mexico State broadcast rights. So they asked me if I wanted to come over and be the voice of the Aggies. What a great break that was for me. And we had a multi-station statewide network for New Mexico State, and I became the voice of the Aggies in the fall of 1980. To make a short story long, the second year coming back doing Diablos baseball, once again in the middle of the summer, Mr. John Phelan, the sales manager of old KTSM Radio, which was carrying the Diablos games, called me in the middle of the summer and he said, John, we've picked up the UTEP broadcast rights. Would you like to do the minor games in the fall? And it took me about a half second to say yes. At that time, UTEP was in the WAC with San Diego State and Hawaii and BYU and Utah and Colorado State and Air Force. So I got a second lucky break and became the voice of the minors, and I've never left.
So before we continue with Diablos baseball, does it feel weird to recount your days as the voice of the New Mexico State Aggies, especially now that you've been the voice of the minors for over 40 years?
Yeah, having been on both sides of the rivalry, but just for a moment at New Mexico State, it is something that's a little bit different. Not many people can say that they've been in any capacity on both sides of the I-10 rivalry, and it's certainly something that I've experienced.
So you said you were from Detroit, correct?
Mm-hmm.
A native there. So how has it been like adjusting to the lifestyle in El Paso? Because you came here in 1980. Some places here in El Paso weren't even built in 1980. How has it been like adjusting to the lifestyle here?
Well, first of all, I was born in Michigan, but I grew up in Southern California and went to college out there. So I came here in January of 1980. And at that time, El Paso had about 300,000 people, so it's about tripled in size since I arrived. But I felt comfortable right from the beginning. I think I fit in with the lifestyle. I think I fit in with the people. I certainly love the food right from the get-go. And since I've been here for the better part of 46 years, now, it's obviously a place that I feel comfortable in, a place that I'm more than thrilled to call home.
When I was speaking to Luis Zuniga, the former sports anchor of Univision 26, back in the days, he showed me an old football magazine of UTEP football. John, I pictured you back when the days with a mustache, back, I think, early 80s, somewhat 90s. What was the sports program like UTEP at that time? Not only when it comes to broadcasting, when it comes to the actual athletics department.
Well, the athletics department was a lot smaller than it is now and a lot more primitive. We had a lot of people doing, I think, more jobs back then than necessarily. I think it's a little more specialized now than it was back then. But it was an exciting time because UTEP basketball was about to embark upon an era that probably was unprecedented in the history of the program, aside from the 66 national championship squad. Don Haskins was about to be rediscovered nearly 20 years after winning that national championship, because in the early to mid to late 80s, UTEP won 5 straight Western Athletic Conference basketball championships and went to the NC2A 7 consecutive years. And the Don Haskins Center, far more often than not, was sold out. We went entire conference seasons in the Western Athletic Conference where you couldn't get a seat to a minor game, more than 12,000 fans for each and every game. And the students were camping out to get their particular tickets. So it was a much different time and obviously a very, very successful time led by basketball in UTEP athletics.
So I want to bring up a player that played at the time during the 80s. Does the name Mr. UTEP Two-Step come into mind when you hear that name?
Tim Hardaway.
Tim Hardaway.
Yeah, yes. Tim's a player that, first of all, in this day and age, we could not have kept. In the era of NIL and revenue sharing, Tim Hardaway would not have been a 4-year minor, so we can be thankful for that. But Tim is a young man, and he was not highly recruited out of Carver High School in Chicago. It was basically UTEP and I think Western Michigan, his only 2 choices. But Tim was a player who, I've said many, many times, probably improved more from year to year in his 4 years at UTEP than any player I've ever seen in any sport in my time here at UTEP.
Before we get in further into basketball, Many people know Don Haskins as a legend in El Paso for the brown statue outside of his arena. Jon, I think you knew him on a more deeper level. What is the best story that you had with Coach Haskins?
It's probably something I can't repeat.
Oh, man.
Yeah, Haskins was a unique guy, and he taught me so very, very much. You know, I worked with Coach for the last 18 years of his career here at UTEP, and in the decade he lived following his retirement from being the head coach of the Miners, we were excellent friends, but we became even better friends, and hardly was there ever a week that went by that we didn't speak multiple times. But I can remember the first time I met Coach Haskins personally. It was in the fall of 1981, and I'd been busy with UTEP football, and the basketball season was starting. And at that time, practice didn't begin until the 15th of October. Now they practice virtually year-round. And I was walking down the tunnel, the long tunnel from the door of the Haskins Center off Glory Road towards the basketball court. And Haskins saw me come towards the end of the tunnel, and I think the Miners were getting ready to practice and were warming up. And he said to anyone in earshot, "Well, here comes that Aggie. Here comes that Aggie," knowing that I had been the voice of New Mexico State that previous year. So that was my first interaction with Coach Haskins all those years ago.
So let's switch up to the first lady of UTEP basketball, Mary Haskins. What was that relationship like with her, seeing her at the basketball games and all that?
Sweetest lady ever, Mary Haskins. And of course, we lost her within the last year, but so much different in terms of her personality and obviously the softer side of Coach Haskins. She was just a magnificent woman, a great mother, and was involved in so many wonderful causes, and certainly we miss her now.
You did sports talk radio for 5 years. In that transition from sports talk to doing play-by-play, what was it like?
Well, actually, it wasn't making a transition because I was doing play-by-play while I was hosting the sports talk show. So I was a busy guy at that time. I was asking you if you got any sleep. I wonder if I got any sleep back in those particular days. But obviously, it's a much different skill. I'm not sure I've got the patience to be a good talk radio host. Steve Kaplowitz and Adrian have taken it to an entirely different level than I was able to go to. But I think the evolution of sports talk radio has certainly been a big one as well, thinking back to that particular time. But it was just something I did. It was not something that I necessarily had any training for or prepared for, and just kind of made it what I could, and just something that I did.
What was it like balancing them out? And did you need to use melatonin?
Well, it was interesting because, again, when you do weekday sports talk radio, it's a 5-day-a-week type thing, and then you might be doing, for instance, once the conference season's here, you might be doing a basketball game on a Thursday, so you might be doing sports talk from 3 until 6, and then at 6:30 you're on doing a pregame show for basketball. So obviously it's a quick transition, but again, you're talking about two different skills. With play-by-play, you're just reacting to a game that's unfolding in front of you, whereas you're basically stirring the drink when you're hosting a sports talk program, a talk radio program.
So the evolution of hot takes have certainly taken over sports media. But back when you were getting started, who were your biggest influences on the field?
In terms of coaches and athletes?
In terms of play-by-play voices in which you admired.
Okay, yeah. Growing up in Southern California, I was blessed, and that's a large part of the reason that I've done this for as long as I have, or that I've done it to any extent at all. I had an opportunity growing up in Southern California to listen to and be influenced by some of the very best broadcasters that have ever put on a headset. Vin Scully, the longtime late voice of the Los Angeles Dodgers. Chick Hearn, the longtime late voice of the Los Angeles Lakers. Dick Enberg was the voice of the Rams and of the Angels locally in Southern California before he went on and did network television, and it even extends to Jiggs McDonald and Bob Miller with the Los Angeles Kings. So I had some of the very best influences that a young broadcaster could have, and listening to them, I think, influenced me to take a run at sports play-by-play broadcasting.
In your career, you did meet some good broadcasters along the way, like Hall of Famer Dave Nitz. Tell us about your relationship with him and how your guys' friendship grew throughout the years.
Nitz was the voice of Louisiana Tech football and basketball for better part of a half century, and he also was the voice of the Shreveport Captains Texas League Baseball Club. I first met Dave when I was doing the Diablos. He was doing the Shreveport Captains, both in the Texas League. So our love of baseball, I think, was the first thing that bonded us, and then later on, Louisiana Tech and UTEP were together in the Western Athletic Conference. UTEP left the WAC, went to Conference USA, and several years later, Louisiana Tech rejoined UTEP in Conference USA. Ironically, next year we're going our separate ways again, but that's how I got to know David. And some of my better friends, I think, in all, are those that do what I do, whether it be in the collegiate ranks or broadcast professional baseball.
One of those people is a certain person named Jack Nixon, who last season was his last year, a 40-plus year decade as being the voice of the Aggies, a title in which you previously held. I remember around the time that he retired, we were at a press conference for Scotty Walden. It was National Recruiting Day, and the first question asked to you was, how do you feel now that you don't have Nixon by your side? How has it been like not having Jack Nixon as your counterpart on the radio waves?
Well, I guess I'll have a better idea on November 22nd when we play our first football game against the Aggies, and obviously the two basketball games once 2026 rolls around. But Jack and I actually shared the distinction of calling New Mexico State games not together but on competing stations. Back in the day, there was the official network of the university, and then other stations were allowed to do games, not only at New Mexico State, but at other universities as well. For instance, when I was a student at UCLA, I remember we played a football game once against the University of Iowa in Los Angeles, and they brought probably a dozen stations into LA, all individually covering the game for their little stations in various parts of the state of Iowa. And back at that time, New Mexico State had their official station, their official network, and then KOBE Radio in Las Cruces was also allowed to call the games. So Jack and I actually traveled together quite a bit of the season that I was the voice of the Aggies, and he was actually doing the games as well for KOBE Radio. So we forged a friendship during that year, and obviously then I took over at UTEP, and eventually he became, quote, the voice of the Aggies and held that job for as many years as he did.
What was that relationship like while you guys were on competing airwaves? Was it a sense of friendly competition, or was there a genuine dislike for each other?
No. I first of all, I think it's impossible to dislike Jack Nixon. I'd like to think it's impossible to dislike me, but I know it's impossible to dislike Jack. He's about as likable an individual and as easygoing an individual as you could meet. So, no, I think we had a very amicable and, we dined together quite a bit in our time on the road and discussed the Aggies and basketball and football and other things as well.
So then to circle back to the question, is there a difference without Jack Nixon being on the radio waves and cruises?
Well, sure there is. Again, when fans of multiple generations identify with a singular voice, there's going to be a period of adjustment for those fans. And I think all of the people associated with the particular program as well. And, I hear from people all the time here in El Paso about multiple generations of individuals and people and families that have been listening to me for the better part of almost 5 decades now. So, yeah, there has to be an adjustment period once a change like that is made.
The influence in which you've left in El Paso is more than sizable. My old high school football coach, at least the football coach of my high school, was a receiver at UTEP. he only caught one touchdown in his career. And he would always tell the story of, when Jon Teicher calls your touchdown, you've made it in life. That was the one touchdown he caught in his entire career. You were the one on the call. Those are memories that have stuck with him. Is that one of the reasons of why you have stayed at El Paso for over 40 plus years?
That's a very good question. And yes, it is. I think that building, I don't know, not necessarily a legacy, but certainly building something of that magnitude has to be something that one in this business values and treasures. In fact, it's funny you mention that, because now for the student athletes in the era of revenue sharing and name, image, and likeness, for instance, last year the 2004 UTEP football team was here celebrating the 20-year anniversary of their Houston Bowl appearance, and it's a very tight group of individuals. And we were talking about the fact that in the current era of intercollegiate athletics, would the student athletes of today ever be able to forge what the student athletes of UTEP football of 2004 have with each other? And the answer is probably no, because the student athlete experience now is so nomadic. You've got kids that are playing at 3 and 4 and some at 5 different schools during their collegiate careers, not putting down any kind of roots at any stop they make. So how can they establish any kind of legacy or any kind of relationship with those that they fight with and participate with over the course of time? So I think it's the same way for a broadcaster as well.
So circling back to the UTEP football team of 2004, let's go back 4 more years to the 2000 UTEP football team. I mean, that team had a brand new head coach underway. They lost their first 2 or 3 games, one to Oklahoma, one to A&M. They come back and they win 7 in a row. That includes 6 in conference play. And one of them they beat was the number 1 overall pick in the 2002 NFL draft, David Carr. I mean, what was it like calling those games, seeing the Sun Bowl that packed? I mean, that's their first and only conference championships, being co-champions with the number 21 TCU at the time. I mean, what was it like?
Well, it had been such a dry spell for UTEP football when you consider that until 1988, UTEP had not been to a bowl game since 1967. It had been more than 20 years, and yet another decade had gone by before UTEP's next bowl appearance after the co-championship of the Western Athletic Conference, the 2000 Humanitarian Bowl. What a great honor that was for me. And again, basketball had so much success in the 1980s. It was nice to see UTEP have so much success and see the fan reaction to that success. To me, that's what it's all about, the fan excitement, the fan enjoyment, the fan reaction to any success that UTEP enjoys. So what a great honor that was. Again, the only WAC championship in football that UTEP won in 37 years in competing in the WAC. And the only other conference football championship the program's ever won was in 1956 in the Border Conference. So, it was a great thrill to be the voice of the 2000 WAC champions.
The 2004 football team, the 2000 football team, we could go back to 1985 when UTEP beat the defending national champions BYU, or basketball's 1992 Sweet 16 March Madness run. Jon, out of all the historic moments and games that you've gotten to call at UTEP, which one has been your favorite?
Well, I think it's got to be that 92 NC2A tournament victory over UTEP that sent the Miners to the Sweet 16. And again, that was kind of really the game that reintroduced Don Haskins to a national audience, because it was UTEP's deepest foray into the NC2A tournament really since the national championship season of 1966. But I think Kansas was the top-seeded team in the entire tournament that year. They were playing to go to Kansas City right in their own backyard and play in the Sweet 16, and UTEP spoiled everything. And, of course, down the stretch, Don Haskins resorted to a four-corner type situation to conserve, to kind of quicken the game and take some time off the clock, and borrowing from Roy Williams and what Kansas liked to do. So That was a great, great thrill. And after the game, at that time, we did a post-game call-in show. And I can remember actually sitting in the arena, the Dayton Arena at the University of Dayton, and we took calls for 7 straight hours after the game on Miner Talk. Such was the excitement of UTEP sports fans and the people here in El Paso. 7 straight hours of phone calls after UTEP knocked off the Jayhawks. I think my next favorite would have been that 1985 BYU game because the Cougars were defending national champions. This game was in, I think it was in late October. The Miners had not won a game. They were coming off a thrashing the week before at Kent State to the Golden Flashes. And obviously BYU was a heavy favorite, and the Miners upset the Cougars, frustrated the Cougars, and it was the only game that UTEP would win in 1985. But I can remember Danny Taylor picking off a pass. Danny is still an educator in El Paso. See him from time to time. Picked off a pass in the north end zone and took it down the Miners sideline 100 yards all the way to the other end zone. And that was one of the key plays in that game, and I can still see it as it unfolded 40 years later.
Is that 1992 basketball team the best UTEP team you ever called? Or if not, which other ones come to mind?
Boy, it's a tough call, again, because you had all those Western Athletic Conference championship teams of the 1980s, all of whom went to the NC2A tournament. You could go back to the 2010 Miners, Tony Barbie's final year as UTEP head coach, when the Miners went unbeaten through Conference USA play. Unfortunately, the Miners lost in the first round of the NC2A tournament to Butler, but that was a very good UTEP team led by Derek Character and Randy Culpepper. So I don't know that I could say that 91-92 team was necessarily the best UTEP team, but certainly it was right there among the best.
I like to go around like a moment where people enjoyed the most. Back in 2013, UTEP's going up against East Carolina. I don't know if you recall this or not. They play at East Carolina. They're on their court, and you're on the radio broadcast, and with 4.4 seconds, Mackenzie Moore just throws up a prayer from nearly half court, and it goes in. It's on YouTube, by the way. There's a video out there, and it's just your voice is cracking. Like, what I understood from the entire game, UTEP trailed. I mean, what was that like calling that game? The excitement and just overall, what was it all about?
Well, anytime a game finishes in that fashion, it's an unbelievable moment, and moments like that should sound the way they probably did back at that particular time, as you say, with my voice cracking a little bit. But it's fun to convey the emotions of that particular time because everyone feels it. The players feel it, the coaches feel it, the broadcasters feel it, the fans in the stands feel it, the fans back in El Paso certainly felt it. So to be the one to convey that particular emotion is an unbelievable feeling.
How do you think is the proper way of a broadcaster to convey emotion to their audience?
The proper way?
Or the way that you think it should be done?
I think it should be done with what reflects the particular moment. Again, I often refer to myself, and I tell my broadcasting partners this. Aaron Price, in fact, just recently joined me starting the second game of the season, the former Miner assistant football coach. And I told Aaron, one of the first things I told him is that basically we are fans. They're privileged to sit up in the press box and talk about the game, as two fans would be sitting side by side, sitting in the stands. So that's basically my orientation as a broadcaster. I'm basically a fan that happens to be up above talking on the radio, but my emotions in calling the game are such that I think they're very much like a fan would be sitting in the stands.
45 years of adrenaline has given you some unforgettable memories. What is the most special moment that the job of being the voice of the Miners has given you, Jon?
Well, it's a good question. It's a tough question. There have been so many memorable finishes to games. I think in a broader perspective, just the opportunity to be the play-by-play voice of this magnificent institution for 4.5 decades is probably the best answer I can give you. I mean, it's an unbelievable feeling. It's been an unbelievable privilege, and one that I take very, very seriously in my preparation. And every time that microphone goes on, regardless of who the Miners might be playing, what the team situation might be, at what stage of the season we're at, just the opportunity to go on once again and talk to an audience that you can't necessarily see and that you can't see, and convey something to them that obviously they enjoy, that they identify with, that's important to them, is something that becomes very significant to me, and a responsibility that I've never, ever taken lightly.
Being on the side of the press, on the side of media, being seen as an icon in the El Paso community. Jon, have you ever had a moment where you've asked someone else for a photo in any media event you've been? And if so, who was it?
Well, I don't know. I'm not much into collecting memorabilia, and that's probably a loss on my part. If you saw my memorabilia collection, you'd probably be underwhelmed, given as long as I've done this and some of the places I've been. But again, I'll take you back to the start of my baseball days. The very first year I did Diablo Baseball, we opened up with a series at home against Midland. And as I recall, on Friday, we were snowed out, believe it or not. This was the first weekend of April. So we played, I think, a single game on Saturday and then a doubleheader on Sunday. And when the doubleheader was over, and that was the end of the series, I went into the manager's office inside the Diablo's locker room. Jim Saul was the manager at that time, a former backup major league catcher. And he had sitting with him at his desk Warren Spahn, who was a minor league pitching coordinator for the California Angels at that time, who was the parent club of the Diablos. Warren Spahn was a Hall of Fame left-hander, one of the greatest left-handed pitchers in the history of baseball. So Warren's sitting there, and he says to me, "Kid, sit down." So I sit down, and he called me kid because I was a kid. I was, 24 years old at that particular time. And we had a nice little chat, myself and Jim, for several minutes. And then finally, Warren says, "Kid, I'm hungry. Would you like to go to dinner with us?" So the three of us, Jim Saul, Warren Spahn, a Hall of Fame pitcher, and Jon Teicher, go to Cattleman's to have Sunday night dinner. And this is the first weekend that I am a professional baseball broadcaster. The story doesn't end there, because the next day, the Diablos go to San Antonio for a 6-game series against the San Antonio Dodgers. And one of Los Angeles minor league pitching coordinators was none other than Hall of Fame left-hander Sandy Koufax. Well, growing up in Southern California, I was a huge Dodger fan, and Koufax was one of my heroes. So, probably 3 days in, I got the courage to approach Koufax and ask if he would tape a pregame interview with me. And I can remember sitting in the San Antonio dugout while the team was taking batting practice, and my knees were shaking at the prospect of interviewing a guy that I idolized, was one of my heroes as a young man. I can remember listening to Vin Scully calling his perfect game against the Chicago Cubs back in 1964, a couple of years before his retirement. And here I am, less than 20 years later, interviewing the great Sandy Koufax, arguably the best left-handed pitcher in the history of the game. And then later on in that series, probably after Game 4 or Game 5, a bunch of us went out to dinner after the game that particular night, and I was asked to go, and Koufax went with us. I mean, a bunch of us went to dinner. So here I am dining with Sandy Koufax. So in my first week as a minor league baseball broadcaster, I'm having dinner with Sandy Koufax and with Warren Spahn, and had an opportunity to interview Koufax on a Diablos pregame show, one of my boyhood idols.
Adrian, you look in disbelief right now.
I'm sorry. I love both of those players, man, because I used to be a left-handed pitcher, and I grew up watching Clayton Kershaw, who, reflected his curveball off of Koufax's curveball. And a couple weeks before,
12-6.
Yeah,
12-6.
12-6. And he doesn't throw a cutter, by the way. Anyway, and before, a couple weeks before this, I actually wanted to listen to Vince Scully's perfect game call on Sandy Koufax's final inning. And I think the best call that arguably a broadcaster's ever made is, I think Koufax is at the loneliest place on earth right now, and that was the Dodgers pitching mound. It's just that's just incomplete. I would have been shaking 24/7 being around those guys.
I was 8 years old that particular night, and I was in bed, and I had smuggled a radio under my pillow and was listening to Scully's call of that perfect game.
He just painted a perfect picture, because back then you couldn't watch the games, you just
Masterful.
only listen to it.
Masterful.
Every single minute detail, it was just, you couldn't do it again the way he did it.
And that's the beauty of broadcasting.
Exactly.
The way that you're able to manipulate diction in a way that forms a story that makes it unforgettable, to the point where we're talking about it over 40 years later. Jon, before you go, just a couple of more questions. I want to circle back to the interview we had last year for Minero Magazine surrounding Scotty Walden and UTEP football. There you told me that usually it takes a coach 3 years to turn a program around. We're now halfway through year 2 of Scotty Walden, and at the time of filming this, UTEP stands 1-4 overall and 0-1 in CUSA. What does El Paso's perspective to this football team need to be? And is there a chance of improvement going forward in the season?
Well, again, I think everybody wants things now and wants things their way now and wants to win now in this particular day and age and the way society is, and I certainly understand that. We'd all like to have things now, but unfortunately, sometimes success and excellence takes time. Sometimes it takes time to curate. Sometimes it takes time to build, and I think certainly progress has been made. It might not be as fast as we'd all like to see, but I still believe that Scotty Walden and his staff are doing all the right things to eventually enjoy that success. Now, obviously, there are some factors, again, in this day and age, with players free to move anytime they basically want to, that kind of change that narrative a little bit or move the goalposts a little bit and can certainly change that timeline. But again, I think fundamentally speaking, Walden and his staff are doing the things that ultimately are going to make them successful. So we'll see. And we'll see how quickly it can happen.
Before we end off this episode, Jon, what does it mean to be a Miner?
I think it means that you're scrappy, you're gritty. I think to be a Miner means that you reflect the character and the grit and the toughness of the people that inhabit this community. And I think this is largely a blue-collar community, and I think to be a Miner means that we're all blue-collar, to reflect the people of our community. So that's the way I see it.
You are a legend, Jon Teicher. Thank you so much for joining the Prospector Podcast and for being so welcoming to student talent, ever growing. When I started at UTEP, you were welcoming from the start. You gave me your card. I still have it in my wallet. Thank you so much for always being so welcoming, Jon.
Guys, thank you for inviting me. I enjoyed it thoroughly, and congratulations on the great preparation you did for this particular podcast. Good job.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
The legend, Jon Teicher, voice of the Miners. That does it for episode 4 of season 13 of the Prospector Podcast. Alongside Adrian, Gonzalez, Jon Teicher, I'm Sebastian Perez-Navarro. We'll be with you really soon, but for now, we're over and out.